welcome back to WTF Cinema. You might be able to guess from my wardrobe today that today's film tackles the topic of mad science. Well, not so much mad science as really dumb science, but still, I felt it was a good enough excuse to play dress up. Because if an adult man can't play dress up in his own apartment while reviewing crappy movies, then what has this country come to? Today's movie was also a film recommended by a fan. It's often called a RoboCop clone, but it actually came out beforehand. Anyway, without further ado, let's dive into The Vindicator! We open, as all good science fiction movies do, in a monkey lab, where they figured out how to program and control the actions of a chimp. They've also included an automatic defense program. Basically, the chimp is programmed to go into a berserk killer rage whenever anything touches him. And look, I hate to go into a long rant right at the beginning of the film, but this is going to be the biggest issue of this film. Why? What purpose does this serve? Why would you ever need to program something to go into a literally uncontrollable rage whenever something casually brushes against it? This barely has military applications. I mean, can you imagine an army of soldiers that go into uncontrollable killing sprees if one of their colleagues accidentally touches them? And if this isn't what the monkey is being used for, the military applications, then what is it designed for? The idea of a remote control chimp has some use, okay? I mean, it's cruel, but we could send it into very difficult situations where we didn't want to risk human lives, and instead we're risking chimp lives. I don't support the idea, but I could see where somebody would at least fund it or see it has a use. It's cruel to do it to a defenseless animal, but I'm not here to do a morality play. I'm here to say, why would you then equip it with a kill everyone trigger? I know ethics probably aren't at the top of their business model, but we're going to come back around to how stupid this concept is many times in this film. To prove my point, one of the scientists decides to really test this device by poking the monkey with a stick until the monkey literally dies of a heart attack. And the other two scientists watch with mild indifference. So these scientists work day in and day out with these animals and have formed absolutely no emotional attachment to them whatsoever. I guess we found our villains. Also, great job on that anger switch, because if the monkey can't get to what's making it mad, it just dies. Super useful. Now we meet our hero, Carl. He's a scientist who's having some issues at work. His boss is stealing his ideas, projects, and funding away from him. Luckily, he's got a cute wife and a baby on the way, so it's not all doom and gloom.
You want to try for twins?
Yeah.
Okay. How come every time I try that pickup line, I get slapped?
So, you want to try for twins? So, you want to try for twins? So, you want to try?
We are then introduced to a very important plot point. Carl has some kind of radio recording equipment set up in his living room. It's never fully explained, but later it's hinted that his wife likes to record herself playing piano or something, so that's why all this equipment is in there. But it also randomly picks up CB radio transmissions and broadcasts them loudly throughout the house. It's something he plans to fix eventually, because having your romantic dinners interrupted by the rubber duck talking to Pigpen about going and picking up some lot lizards, you put up with that for a while. The next day, Carl confronts his boss, Alex, and says he wants answers now, and his boss says he'll get answers in 2 days. And Carl seems okay with that.
Look, I have a right to know. You can't keep keeping these things from me. If I don't know what's going on, how am I supposed to do my job? I deserve answers, damn it, and I'm not leaving here until you give them to me.
I'll tell you in 2 days.
Yeah, all right.
Next, we meet Carl's best friend, Bert. We're going to have a lot of fun at Bert's expense.
You gotta promise me one thing, though. If you ever get tired of your family, you'll give them to me.
Hey, they're yours.
Yeah, that's not a creepy thing to say at all. Bert leaves to get some coffee, and Carl notices a piece of expensive equipment starting to melt down. And I think we can all see where this is going, right? And Carl goes boom.
So, this might not be the right time, but your husband said I could have you and your kid.
Meanwhile, back at the chimp lab, Alex has apparently brought in a horribly burned and mutilated body that is being kept alive through the use of white blood and science! Luckily, the movie doesn't try to psych us out. We're pretty much immediately told that the body is Carl, and weirdly, none of the scientists object to the fact that they're using their nearly dead friend as a lab experiment. So, scientists in this world are all just jerks, apparently. They're going to take his living brain and put it in an indestructible robot body that was originally designed to work on Mars.
So, this might not be the right time, but your husband said I could have you and your kid.
Anyway, now it's time to start building our monster. We have the technology. We can make him faster, stronger, better. And now comes the biggest WTF of this movie.
I still don't understand why you connected the rage response activator to the computer. If he senses any kind of threat, he could turn into an uncontrollable killer.
Yeah, that's a damn good question, actually. I mean, I know the guy thinks that he's going to be able to control it, but why put that technology in him in the first place? And that's completely ignoring why this technology exists, because we still don't have a solid answer on that. But if you can remotely control him, why does he need to have any kind of automatic reaction to anything? If he's going to be controlled by you, why don't you just control him instead of programming in, oh, and, while I'm controlling him, if somebody touches him, he goes nuts and kills everything. If you want him to be a killing machine, use your control and make him kill. I mean, this is just begging for something to go wrong. And again, at no point in any of this process does anyone point out this was our friend. His wife thinks he's dead. We're tampering in the domain of God, or anything like that. When the body doesn't work as planned, the first thing the scientists remove is the remote control receiver, because these are the dumbest scientists ever. When he starts walking around, they realize they need to put the remote control device back into him, only you can't do that without touching him, and you can't touch him without him going into a murderous rage. Jeez, who could have possibly seen this being a problem? Carl makes his escape as the rage monkeys get loose and start killing everything around them. And any movie with a scene full of rage monkeys can't be all bad. Carl is actually able to escape the lab by hiding in a dump truck, which promptly dumps off all of its garbage in an incinerator. Whoops. Luckily, having the suit completely incinerated doesn't harm any of its actual functions. It just turns it from a gold to a black. Carl is still able to walk around free, and despite the fact that they said they were only putting his brain into this robotic body, we clearly see that he still has his eyes and part of his face. The movie then flashes back to when Carl blew up earlier. It's meant to tell us that Carl is remembering his accident. And I don't know that we've actually talked about this before, but most flashbacks are pretty awful and unnecessary. I mean, look at this example. They are flashing back to something we saw happen in the movie 10 minutes ago. We were just there. We saw it. We remember it. Why show this again? I mean, if you're a TV show, sometimes you need to do flashbacks to previous episodes. Not everybody sees every episode. And if you're doing some kind of a mystery, then you want to show us the little pieces that we probably missed because they were a little inconsequential. Oh, look, he did put his hand down there. Oh, look, I remember she was in the background of that scene. So you want to string a couple of those real quick flashbacks together so that the ending makes sense to us. Even on occasion, having the character remember a line of dialogue that's going to shape the scene is okay. Or, a line of dialogue from earlier in the film to give him the motivation to get through or whatever. but I don't need to see a flashback to something we saw 10 minutes ago. I haven't even taken a bathroom break at this point. I remember it. I just saw it. I can assume that the robot man who was walking around on his own free will and showed enough intelligence to escape the lab remembers how he blew up. Especially with all the scenes that are going to follow up, the whole rest of the movie. I understand we have to spoon-feed modern audiences, but this is ridiculous. I was just there. I just saw this.
If someone touches him, anyone, his onboard computer will take over. And he'll kill.
Gosh, it's almost like equipping him with that was a really stupid idea, Alex.
At long last, I've done it! I have created the ultimate cuddly toy for children. Just touching it will soothe the heart of any child around. Cool. Can I try it? Well, no. Unfortunately, if anybody actually touches it, it will activate a thermonuclear device and wipe out all life in the state. Why would you do something like that? Science! Have we finished your funny little skit here now? Can we go back to watching? Oh, thanks. Good movies. Those goggles make you look fat.
As Carl is walking home, he's cornered by a group of guys on motorcycles, because of course that's what motorcycle gangs do. They follow robots into alleys to beat them up. This ends about as badly for them as you would expect. And here's another thing I don't understand about the whole rage thing. We were told that the rage lasts until the threat is taken care of. That's why the monkey died of the heart attack earlier, because the guy was poking him with a stick from outside the cage. He couldn't resolve the issue. The last guy in the motorcycle gang, who never touched him, has his hands up, is backing away, pleading for mercy. Look, man, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I'm sorry. Just let me go. Doesn't that mean the threat's gone? This guy never touched you. This guy never threatened you. His friends did. You killed them. Under what circumstances are you threatened by a guy who hasn't touched you, has his hands in the air, and is backing away pleading for mercy? The threat has been handled. Apparently not. But while this doesn't kill the guy, it does end the threat. So even though he didn't, the guy's going to linger for another couple of minutes, but the threat's done. So Carl returns to himself, leans down, removes the guy's helmet, and touches his face before the guy dies. So Carl is allowed to touch other people without triggering the rage response, but they can't touch him. That's a pretty damn fine line to walk. Where does the touchy become the toucher? Like, how programmed is his brain that it can differentiate between, okay, I'm touching this person, but they're not touching me yet. They're not touching me yet. Now they're touching me and they must die! So Carl goes home, but he doesn't want to scare his wife with his new monstrous appearance. So remember that malfunctioning radio thing from before? Somehow, Carl's new body is able to transmit a signal that it can pick up, and he's able to talk to his wife. We'll ignore how the brain in a robot body learned within an hour or two to transmit on a wavelength that knew could be picked up by malfunctioning home radio equipment. And instead we're going to focus on the fact that because they put his voice through so many filters to make him sound robotic and weird in this, I can't actually understand a thing he says in any of these scenes where he talks to his wife through the radio. I'm sure it's emotional and poignant stuff. A dead man talking to his wife through a radio. But if I can't understand a word that's coming out of his mouth, a lot of the emotion's going to be lost on me. Alex decides that Carl is too dangerous for just anyone to bring back in, so he's decided to hire Hunter.
Hunter! Hunter, quickly!
No, not that Hunter. This one. That's right. Pam Grier. This movie has Foxy Brown in it. This movie has Pam Grier and Rage Monkeys. How is this not a blockbuster smash? Apparently, at Carl's instructions, I guess, since I can't understand him, Carl's wife goes to meet Bert to tell him that Carl is still alive. I'm skipping a couple of subplots here, like Carl making friends with a little boy in a junkyard, and Carl's wacky sister-in-law trying to rid the house of evil spirits, and a sequence where one of the scientists is being a complete jackass to his girlfriend. The little boy scene is there, so we got kind of this Frankenstein motif going on. The wacky sister-in-law is mainly to pad out the length of the film, and the scientist being a jackass is so that we can shoehorn some nudity into this thing, because any B-grade sci-fi horror film needs random nudity. Because you'd never suspect someone who has a life-size portrait of a woman's ass on his bedroom wall to be a jerk to women. Carl talks to the scientist in question and is able to get some information about his suit before leaving. Because even though it's never explained in the movie, apparently Hunter has an entire army at her disposal, and they're making sure that all of the scientists who created Carl are protected at all times in case he shows up. I mean, they're not really effective because Carl kills the scientist and escapes into the sewers, but Hunter is close on his tail. But first, she has to take care of the only witness that wasn't on her payroll, the girlfriend. Man, that girl is having just a really bad night. Hunter prepares to take her army into the sewers to find Carl. They're equipped with acid guns, but they still aren't 100% sure if that will actually be able to harm him. The scientist who designed the suit has no idea what might harm it. Again, these scientists are not very good at their jobs. This sewer sequence goes on forever, furthering my theory that the writers and director didn't have enough material for a full film. When they finally try the acid on him, it triggers his rage response. Let's do a little flashback here. Do you remember his rage response? I mean, it's a crucial part of the film. It's come up several times. If something touches him, he goes into irrational killing anger until he is able to resolve the threat. Completely irrational rage, right? No thinking. That's how the monkey died of a heart attack. You can't think. You attack until the threat is gone. So, what does this completely irrational killing machine do when acid is turned against it? Cracks open a couple of pipes and is somehow able to create an improvised flamethrower while under attack in a completely mindless state. So he can't control himself enough to not kill a man who is surrendering and never harmed him. But he has complete control to MacGyver a flamethrower in the middle of a sewer. In his mindless, rage-induced state, he makes a flamethrower, and then, when that makes the soldiers run off, he does not pursue them. He lets them go, even though the threat has not been finished. Exactly like the irrational monster we've been told over and over again that he is. Knowing that the scientists are now eavesdropping on his messages to his wife, Carl apparently manages to hide a signal in her recording equipment by speaking super duper fast. And then she happens to find the message later when she's reviewing some tapes she makes of herself listlessly pounding at a piano. The message is a poem, which basically translates to, "Meet me at the church." By pure coincidence, she manages to find this message, let alone finding it in time to actually make the appointment to meet him at the church. Like, she just happened to be playing back a segment of tape where he happened to have left this message. He just happened to know she was recording when he left the message. All of those problems aside, why is it this stupid little poem? Why not just say, "Meet me at the church"? Because if he was hoping somehow that the bad guys would find the message but they wouldn't be able to crack it, let me tell you, the actual end of the little poem is, "They must avoid family torn, so should meet at the church in the morn." Yeah, there's no way the bad guys will crack that code, Riddler. Meet at the church in the morn. What could that mean? He's a diabolical genius. We'll never figure it out. At Carl's request, his wife arranges for Bert to meet Carl in an old warehouse. Carl tries to convince Bert to sneak him information about the lab, but shockingly, the guy who has very clearly been trying to move in on Carl's wife betrays Carl. I know. None of us saw that coming. So anyway, Carl is now trapped in Jello. Alex thanks Bert for betraying his friend Carl, and then tells Bert that he's going to have to go kill Carl's wife. Bert isn't happy about it, but finally agrees, because otherwise Alex is going to fire him. Then immediately after Bert agrees, Alex says he's been doing a pretty lousy job at work, and he really needs to get his act together, otherwise he's going to be fired. Dude, the only reason he just went along with your evil plan was because you threatened to fire him. You can't then follow his agreement with, "Oh, we might fire you anyway." Like, what? You gotta wait until after he does your murderous bidding to threaten to fire him anyway. He just barely agreed to do this because you threatened to take away his new job and his new salary. You can't then immediately go, "Which you might lose anyway." What the hell's wrong with you? You're the worst evil mastermind! While being transported back to the lab, Carl is able to break out of the jello simply by ignoring the laws of physics. Who does he think he is, Hulk Hogan? This results in the truck carrying him over a cliff and exploding. And I don't mean the truck hits the ground and then explodes like you normally see in movies. No, the truck explodes the second the front wheels leave the ground. I can't even think of anything funny to say about how incredibly stupid that is. I mean, it's meant to be a damn cool shot, right? It's a big stunt shot. I'm sure they could only do it one time. Let's get it right this first time. It's supposed to be dramatic, a big explosion. When I saw this movie for the first time with my friends, we watched this scene a couple of times, laughing our asses off, which is probably not what the filmmakers were hoping would happen. So I've made a couple jokes this whole time about Bert moving in on Carl's wife, but in this scene he flat out tells her that it's time for the two of them to get out of town, that he'll be a good husband to her, and a good father to her unborn child. Icky. Just icky. Her rejection leads to a long fight sequence where she's saved by her sister at the last minute, and then Hunter shows up and kills the sister, and Bert punches the wife stone cold in her face. This sequence ends up with Carl showing up, killing Bert, and Hunter getting away with Carl's wife. So now it's time to move on to our final confrontation. All our characters finally make it to the lab, and the villains tell Carl that if he does not reattach the remote control unit, they'll kill his wife. Has anyone asked if the remote control unit's even going to fit in the suit anymore? Various fights, burned alive, acid flung at him, then stuffed in jello. Do we have any proof that this thing's going to fit in its slot anymore? Pam Grier finally decides she's had enough of this movie and throws his wife at him so that she can get away. So now he has to kill the wife, right? That's the rules. Mindless rage, irrational killer instinct. That's the only thing we know about his suit. But of course, the power of love overcomes all science! Actually, Carl tells us that he reprogrammed himself off camera, which is almost as lame a cop-out as the power of love. We didn't see him reprogram himself. He wasn't involved in the Rage Monkey project, but somehow knows enough about science to reprogram this killer instinct that he had put into him this whole time. But it would be a pretty stupid climax to our film if Alex couldn't fight back. So he stuffs himself into another suit so that they're an equal match. And I guess we're going to ignore the fact that we were told that Carl is just a brain in a robotic body, because apparently now there's room in that suit for all the same technology and a live human inside of all of that. I don't think you can quite get the same effects of being a cyborg as you can by slipping on a tinfoil suit. But apparently that's where we're at. We have completely forgotten how this entire suit thing was supposed to work, even though it's our main premise. And I'd like to give this movie a little bit of credit, because I like to when movies do something right. Usually in these cases, the woman is standing around in the background, wringing her hands and screaming and scared. But in this one, they're actually going to let the wife, whose name I still don't know, I think it might be Lauren? She starts tearing apart the lab to prevent two more attack robots from becoming active, although we don't know what brains are controlling those. Maybe Alex put the dead scientists into those? I mean, they don't say it. And I don't care. I just want this to be over. During the struggle, Carl manages to get a hold of a pipe pumping some white fluid and jams it into Alex's suit, causing Alex to drown to death in his own suit. A suit that the entire point of it is it can be piloted by a dead man's brain. A brain with no lungs attached. But again, apparently instead of all of this movie telling us how these suits work, Alex just put on a suit and it worked the same as the whole robot body dead brain thing, because now he's in there and he drowned to death. And then we learn that Carl died at some point, I guess. The end. The entire ending sequence is basically several years in the future. Carl is remembered for giving his life to test how burn-resistant the spacesuit was. And his wife is bringing Carl Jr. to basically see his father's corpse in a museum. That's it. That's the end of the movie. This movie is dumb. I'm going to go back to the rage thing in a second, but this ending. After all of the struggle, all of the fight, you want to find out what happens to Carl. We're led to assume he just kind of died, and then they put his corpse in a museum and changed the facts. It wasn't an evil scientist took over his body and turned him into a killing machine. It was, he was testing the spacesuit. And it's the black, burned, charred one, which means it's the one that his dead brain is still in, right? That's just creepy and weird. And also, it doesn't give me a lot of resolution. So he was finally able to get revenge on the people that killed him. Great. And then he died. I mean, turning him back into a human would have been pretty lame too, but Jesus. Let him walk off into the sunset or something. And then can we just one last time talk about the Rage Machine? What is the point of creating a remote control entity with an override on a hair trigger that, if he is touched, goes into killing rage and must kill everything around him until the threat is eliminated and he has no control? The only thing that can stop it is the remote control device, which they took out at the beginning. What if the remote control device got damaged? No fail-safes at all? No other way to fix this? And yet we saw he was able to touch other people. He was able to stop short of killing the guy. The guy then died of his own injuries, but he didn't directly... He caused the guy's death, but it took time after the rage wore off. Then he improvised a flamethrower in the sewer and did not chase after the other scientists. Uncontrollable rage, except sometimes. And then he's able to reprogram himself off camera so that he can touch his wife one last time. This movie is so... I don't know what the point of any of this was. I don't know what they were really hoping to achieve, why it had to be their dead friend, why the Rage Machine. Hunter came into this movie and was completely ineffectual despite being the best there is at what she does. I think somebody just found out Pam Grier had a free weekend and wrote her into the script real quick. Like I said at the beginning, this is not mad science. This is dumb science. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go build a woman out of computer parts.
Weird science.